They never look like villains. In fact, they often look like the answer to everything you've ever wanted. They walk into your life with the confidence of a savior, the charm of a visionary, and the precision of someone who has studied you far more than you've studied yourself. They know exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to look at you so you feel seen. Maybe for the first time in a long time, you won't find them lurking in shadows. They are the light, at first. But that light, it's a spotlight, not a sunrise, and it's aimed directly at you until it blinds you. This is how it begins. With a narcissist, you don't meet them, you get pulled into them, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. Carl Jung once said, "The brighter the light, the darker the shadow." And narcissists, more than anyone, understand this duality and exploit it. They are not simply arrogant or self-absorbed. That's the cartoon version. The real narcissist is far more dangerous, precisely because they don't appear dangerous. They appear ideal, but beneath the surface lies something else, a psychological predator, a master of illusion, a person who survives not by connecting, but by consuming. And they don't take your money, your time, or your trust first. They take your sense of reality. They do this in 3 calculated phases: idealization, devaluation, and discard. A psychological cycle so subtle, so polished, that you won't even call it abuse. You'll call it love. You'll call it fate. You'll call it your fault. But this script isn't just about them. It's about you. Because narcissists can only succeed if you play your role. And chances are you've already played it, the one who forgives, the one who believes in second chances, the one who thinks, maybe if I just love them harder. But this pattern isn't random. Carl Jung warned us that when we repress our inner darkness, our instincts, our anger, our intuition, we don't get rid of it. We make ourselves vulnerable to those who embody it. Narcissists are not just born. They are created by the same world that teaches others to suppress themselves. They become bold because the rest of us are trained to be silent, and so they walk among us, in boardrooms, in relationships, in friend groups, online, in positions of power, and sometimes next to you in bed. The more charming they are, the more dangerous they can be, because charm is not a virtue, it's a mask. In this documentary, we're going to expose them, not with hate, but with light. We'll decode the red flags you were taught to ignore. We'll explore how Jung's shadow theory reveals their blueprint. And most importantly, we'll confront the truth. You can't defeat what you refuse to see. Because narcissists don't destroy you all at once. They destroy you quietly. Through doubts, through flattery, through control disguised as love. And if you don't know what to look for, you'll keep calling it connection. But this isn't connection. It's consumption, and it only ends one of 2 ways. You lose yourself completely, or you wake up in time. Let's begin. Carl Jung didn't invent narcissism, but he might have understood it better than anyone else. To Jung, the most dangerous people in the world weren't the ones society labeled as evil. They were the ones who wore masks so well, even they believed the performance. These are the people who repress everything dark within them, until that darkness forms a second identity, a hidden self, a shadow. And it's not optional. It's psychological law. Whatever we push down grows stronger in the dark. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Narcissists are the shadow, unprocessed, unintegrated, and weaponized. They are what happens when a person builds their identity on lies they've told themselves so many times. They forget their lies. They don't believe they manipulate people. They believe people just don't understand them. They don't believe they lack empathy. They believe others are just too sensitive. They don't believe they use others. They believe they deserve what others have. This is where the Jungian concept of the persona becomes critical. Every human wears a social mask, a persona, to function in society. But narcissists don't just wear the persona, they live in it. They abandon the authentic self so early, so completely, that the mask becomes their only identity. Everything they say, every gesture, every compliment, is filtered through a calculation. How does this make me look? How does this make me feel superior? How does this serve me? To Jung, the tragedy wasn't just that such people existed. The tragedy was that we invite them in, because the narcissist doesn't activate the logical part of your brain. They activate the emotional, archetypal part, the part that yearns for completion, admiration, intensity. We mistake their obsession for love, their control for passion, their emotional swings for depth. But it's not depth. It's a vortex, and Jung's deeper insight? You don't attract a narcissist because you're naive. You attract them because a part of you is disassociated from your own shadow. That is, your instincts, your anger, your boundaries. If you were raised to believe that being good means being agreeable, selfless, endlessly understanding, you suppress the parts of yourself that warn you. And what do you do with those red flags? You justify them. You romanticize them. You intellectualize them. But what you don't do is run. Jung argued that we must reclaim our shadow, not reject it, to look at it, to listen to it, to learn what it wants. Because when you integrate your shadow, you stop being prey. You stop mistaking abuse for fate. You stop confusing manipulation with love. And you stop thinking you can fix people who are committed to breaking others. Narcissists thrive in the gap between who you pretend to be and what you refuse to see. And here's the brutal truth Jung hinted at, but society still avoids. A narcissist can only destroy the parts of you that aren't fully yours yet. Your identity, your confidence, your sense of self-worth. If these are borrowed, fragile, untested, they become the narcissist's playground. But if these are owned, earned, and integrated, they become the narcissist's dead end. So the question isn't, why are narcissists so manipulative? The question is, what in me made their manipulation feel like love? That's the Jungian path. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about knowing yourself fully. Only then can you spot the mask. Only then can you hear the tone shift. Feel the energy drain. Sense the invisible game being played, because once you become conscious, you can't be controlled unconsciously. Let's be honest. We all think we'd see the signs. We like to believe we'd notice manipulation, deceit, or toxic control right away. But that belief is part of the trap. Narcissists don't attack you like an enemy. They seduce you like a fantasy. And the red flags? They don't come screaming. They come disguised as everything you've ever wanted. Red flag number 1. They move fast, too fast. The first red flag is speed. Narcissists don't date, they hunt. They don't build connections. They manufacture intimacy. They mirror your values. They echo your dreams. They say you're the one before they've earned the right to know who you even are. And because it feels so intense, so cinematic, you assume it must be fate. But Carl Jung warned that intensity is not always truth. Often it's the shadow, unleashed and unfiltered. A narcissist speeds up the timeline for one reason. Control becomes easier when your critical thinking hasn't caught up yet. Red flag number 2. You feel addicted to their approval. At first, they put you on a pedestal. They make you feel chosen, unique, needed. And then, they begin the slow withdrawal. They start pulling back affection, becoming cold, creating confusion. And without realizing it, your mind begins chasing the high of their early love. This is not love. This is a psychological addiction cycle. Reward and withdrawal, validation and rejection. It hijacks your nervous system. You're not in a relationship, you're in a loop. This is where the trauma bond begins. Jung might call this the soul's confusion between what is real and what is archetypal, the difference between emotional intensity and spiritual truth. Red flag number 3. Everything becomes about them. First, They seemed endlessly fascinated by you. But now, every story circles back to them. Every problem somehow becomes your fault. When you're happy, they feel threatened. When you're upset, they make it about their pain. When you ask for space, they accuse you of abandonment. Over time, your emotions become filtered through a single lens. Will this upset them? This is how they trap you, not with aggression, but with emotional recentering, where your entire inner world becomes orbiting theirs. Red flag number 4. You apologize. Just to keep the peace. You apologize for their moods. You walk on eggshells. You tiptoe around their triggers. And worst of all, you start apologizing for who you are. They don't need to scream or hit or insult. Their disapproval becomes punishment enough. A single look, a sarcastic comment, a quiet retreat of affection. It's not the loud abuse that breaks you. It's the silence, the emotional absence, the constant feeling of I've done something wrong even when you haven't. Jung said the unconscious controls us until it's made conscious. This is it. This is how the unconscious becomes a prison. Red flag number 5. You don't recognize yourself anymore. You used to be confident, curious, vibrant. But now, you second-guess everything. You hesitate before speaking. You seek their approval before making choices you used to make easily. Narcissistic abuse isn't about physical wounds. It's about erasure. They don't destroy you by force. They reshape you in their image. You begin to disappear. Not all at once, but piece by piece, memory by memory, choice by choice. And yet through all of this you stay, not because you're weak, but because the abuse has been wrapped in love, in promises, in hope. This is what makes narcissism so dangerous. It hides behind the language of healing. They say, I just had a rough childhood. You're too sensitive. I only act this way because I love you so much. But love doesn't erase people. Love doesn't manipulate your reality. Love doesn't make you question your worth. Carl Jung believed that modern people suffer, not just from neuroses, but from meaninglessness, from a disconnection between the conscious and unconscious mind, from ignoring the soul's voice until it becomes a scream, and in a world that teaches you to dismiss your instincts, to rationalize abuse, and to prioritize image over truth, you become easy prey. You were trained to ignore the red flags, but you can retrain yourself to see them, to trust your intuition, to reclaim your boundaries, and to realize your peace doesn't need to be earned through suffering. To the untrained eye, narcissistic abuse seems random. One day you're adored, the next you're despised. Then, suddenly, you're discarded like you never mattered at all. But make no mistake, there is a method behind this madness, a psychological blueprint. It's called idealize, devalue, discard. And it's not just behavior. It's a strategy, whether conscious or unconscious, used to dominate, destabilize, and dismantle your identity. Stage 1. Idealization, the seduction of the mirror at. First, they reflect everything you want to see. They don't just love you, they worship you. They say you're unlike anyone they've ever met. They text constantly, compliment endlessly. They want to know your deepest wounds, and they listen with care. But here's the truth. They're not falling in love with you. They're constructing a fantasy, one where you play a role, the ideal partner, the perfect supply, the savior of their emptiness. Carl Jung called this projection. When someone confuses the image in their head with the actual soul standing in front of them. And in this phase, the narcissist projects perfection onto you. But no one can live up to a fantasy. And when the illusion cracks, the second stage begins. Stage 2. Devaluation. The slow poison. The pedestal becomes a prison. Suddenly, the same things they praised now irritate them. Your independence becomes selfish. Your boundaries become cold. Your emotions are too much. They start comparing you to others. They minimize your achievements. They twist your words, your tone, your silence, until you begin questioning your sanity. This is not random cruelty. This is psychological warfare. You try harder. You over-explain. You self-censor. You become addicted to their rare moments of approval, because each one feels like a return to the honeymoon phase. But it never lasts, because the truth is, they never loved you. They loved how you made them feel about themselves. And once that glow fades, they punish you for their own emptiness. Jung believed that when we deny our shadow, it doesn't disappear. It projects outward, as blame, hate, and destruction. The narcissist is at war with themselves, but you become the battlefield. Stage 3. Discard, the vanishing act, and then, without warning, it ends. Sometimes they ghost. Sometimes they start. A fight so vicious, so irrational, it becomes an excuse to walk away. Other times they already have someone else lined up, a new target, a new fantasy. And you? You're left broken, confused, obsessing over what you did wrong. But the discard phase isn't about you, it's about power. They leave to prove they're untouchable. They vanish to reinforce the belief that they were the prize, not you. This isn't just a breakup, it's a psychological assassination. Your sense of self, your trust in reality, your belief in love, it's all under siege. And here's the final twist. They often come back, not out of love, but to see if they still own you, if the chain still fits, if the manipulation still works. The cycle is the point: idealize, devalue, discard, and repeat. This is not a glitch. This is the system. Each phase is designed to manipulate your nervous system, to keep you in a state of anxiety, longing, confusion, and dependence. It's a trauma bond, a psychological addiction. You don't stay because you love them. You stay because your brain is wired to chase the high of the idealize phase, even while enduring the pain of the devaluation. And when they discard you, you're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the hope they sold you. Carl Jung believed that the greatest danger is not the evil we recognize, but the evil we rationalize. Narcissistic abuse survives not just through cruelty, but through confusion. They train you to question your memory, to doubt your instincts, to suppress your truth, because the moment you see the pattern is the moment you become free of it. This isn't just about narcissists. It's about a culture that rewards charm over character, that encourages image over integrity, that teaches people to perform rather than connect. But once you understand this cycle, you can break it. You stop chasing closure from someone who profits off your confusion. You stop begging for truth from someone addicted to distortion. You stop trying to heal inside the house where you were wounded. Because healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from awakening. And awareness is the beginning of power. You don't attract narcissists because you're weak. You attract them because something unconscious in you responds to the chaos they bring. This is the painful paradox that Carl Jung spent his life trying to explain. Not everything you attract is random. Sometimes it's a mirror, a projection, a lesson your unconscious is forcing you to confront. The shadow, the rejected. Jung called it the shadow. The part of your psyche you disown, repress, and bury deep beneath the surface. It holds your rage, your jealousy, your selfishness, your guilt, your forgotten desires. Not because those traits are inherently evil, but because society, parents, and religion taught you they were unacceptable. So you split. You became the good one, the agreeable one, the caretaker, the fixer, the empath. But what you repress doesn't vanish. It lives in the basement of your mind, growing stronger, more volatile, more seductive, and eventually, it finds its way back to you, disguised as someone else. The narcissist is shadow mirror. This is why you may feel magnetized to narcissists, even though you know they're dangerous, because they express what you've buried. They're bold, selfish, unapologetic. They take up space. They demand attention. You, on the other hand, were taught to shrink, to give, to earn love by sacrificing yourself. So the narcissist doesn't just trigger your wounds, they awaken your shadow, and this creates a psychological pull. You don't just want their approval, you want their power. Not to harm, but to reclaim the parts of yourself you were told to suppress. But here's the danger. If you don't integrate your shadow, it chooses partners for you. It creates patterns that look like fate, but are actually trauma loops begging for your attention. You must become what you're missing, Jung once said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. Healing isn't just about avoiding narcissists. It's about reclaiming the power within yourself that was stolen or shamed. You don't escape the narcissist by changing them. You escape by transforming you, by facing your anger, your resentment, your fear of being alone, your guilt around saying no. You learn to become what you were always seeking in others: protective, grounded, honest, whole. Because when you integrate your shadow, you stop mistaking predators for lovers. You stop confusing manipulation for intimacy. You stop believing that your worth is something to be negotiated. The narcissist isn't the enemy. Avoidance, as Jung didn't see the shadow as evil. He saw it as essential. The problem isn't the darkness, it's pretending it doesn't exist. Narcissists flourish when you're disconnected from your own shadow, because then you project your power outward, and they pick it up like a weapon. But when you do the inner work, when you integrate, when you stop trying to be endlessly nice and start becoming radically authentic, you become immune to their tactics. You spot the love bombing. You don't collapse under guilt trips. You don't need their validation because you finally validated yourself. This is shadow work. Shadow work isn't spiritual fluff. It's psychological survival. It's the act of becoming honest, so deeply honest, that you stop performing for love. You stop rescuing people who refuse to save themselves. You stop betraying yourself just to avoid conflict. You stop believing that peace is found in keeping others comfortable, and in that discomfort, you find freedom. Because once you face what you fear within, no one can use it against you. You saw the red flags, the manipulation, the lies, the subtle insults masked as jokes. You felt the unease, the gut instinct that something was off. And yet, you stayed. Why? Because most people don't ignore red flags out of stupidity. They ignore them out of survival, conditioned to abandon. Yourself from childhood, many of us are conditioned to ignore our own instincts. You're taught that being good means being agreeable. That love must be earned through pleasing others. That anger is dangerous. That doubt is disloyal. That your feelings are too much, or worse, not valid at all. So when a narcissist enters your life, their red flags don't register as warnings. They register as normal. You confuse anxiety with excitement, control with protection, obsession with love. You tell yourself, maybe I'm just overreacting. They're not that bad and I'm just too sensitive. But the truth is simpler and more painful. You were trained to distrust yourself, to make excuses for pain, to stay silent when your boundaries were being shattered. Trauma bonds. Why you stay when it hurts. Narcissists don't trap you with chains. They trap you with confusion and hope. One moment they devalue you. The next they're charming, apologetic, intoxicating. This creates a trauma bond, a psychological addiction to inconsistency. You start to crave the version of them that doesn't really exist. The early version, the one who loved you. But that version was a mask, and deep down some part of you knows it. Still, you wait, because walking away would mean facing the truth, that it was never real, that the person you gave your soul to never existed. And that truth is often more painful than the abuse itself. Shame and the fear of being wrong. You also stay because of shame. You made sacrifices. You defended them to your friends. You ignored your own needs to make the relationship work. So to leave now would mean admitting you were wrong. And for someone who's already been gaslighted into self-doubt, that admission feels like death. It's easier to keep pretending, to hope they'll change, to tell yourself it's just a rough patch. But every time you do that, you betray yourself a little more. And eventually, you become the ghost of who you once were. The culture of narcissism, but it's not just personal psychology at play. It's cultural. We live in a world that rewards narcissistic traits: confidence without competence, charisma over character, attention as currency. From social media influencers to corporate leaders, the most rewarded people are often the most self-absorbed. So when a narcissist shows up in your life, society whispers, they're just confident. You're just insecure. But Jung would say, no, this isn't confidence. It's inflation of the ego, a defense against a crumbling inner world. And when you confuse ego for power, you silence your soul to survive. Waking up from the spell. Eventually something breaks. You realize the relationship isn't about love. It's about control. You notice how your voice has gotten quieter, how your eyes don't shine the way they used to, how you walk on eggshells, flinching from their moods, waiting for the next storm. That moment, however painful, is sacred. It's the moment you begin to see. And once you see, you can't unsee. The spell begins to shatter. You begin to remember who you were before the war began. The courage to believe yourself. The first step isn't leaving them. It's believing you. Believing that your instincts are valid, that your feelings are not overreactions, that your boundaries are not negotiable, because once you believe yourself, you become ungovernable. The narcissist loses their grip. The red flags become deal breakers, not puzzles to solve. And in that shift, you reclaim what was stolen from you: your clarity, your peace, yourself. Leaving a narcissist isn't just a breakup, it's a rebirth. And like all rebirths, it begins in darkness, because the moment you walk away is the moment the real war begins. The aftershock at first, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like confusion, withdrawal, even grief. You start to question your own decision. Was I too harsh? Maybe they weren't that bad. What if I never find someone else? This is the residue of gaslighting, the echoes of a psychological virus still whispering in your ear, because narcissistic abuse doesn't just hurt you, it rewires you. Your nervous system becomes addicted to crisis. Your brain confuses unpredictability with love. Your identity, once strong, now feels hollow. This is not weakness, this is trauma. And healing from it isn't just about moving on. It's about reclaiming everything you lost while trying. To be loved by someone who never truly saw you. The smear campaign, don't expect them to let go gracefully. A narcissist sees your escape as an injury to their ego. They need control, even after you've left. So they rewrite the story. Suddenly, you were the abuser. You were unstable. You betrayed them. They'll tell your friends, your family, your coworkers. They'll cry in public while mocking you in private. Why? Because if they can't control your reality anymore, they'll try to control your reputation. Carl Jung would say this is the ego in collapse, a wounded persona scrambling to preserve its false image. Let them talk. Their lies will echo for a while. But the truth, your truth, is not theirs to define. The void where they used to live, you'll feel a space inside you, an emptiness where they once occupied every thought. This is when the temptation returns. To call them, to stalk their social media, to wonder if they've changed. But here's the hard truth. They haven't. They won't. They just got better at pretending. Every time you go back, the abuse returns stronger, dressed in sweeter words and deadlier silence. You must resist the fantasy. You're not missing them. You're missing the version of you who hadn't yet been broken by them. Rebuilding the self. This is where the real work begins. You start to reclaim the pieces you abandoned, you set boundaries, and don't apologize. For them, you say no, and don't explain yourself. You cry, and don't shame yourself for the tears. You learn to be alone, not lonely. You learn to trust slowness, to crave peace over intensity, to feel safe in your own presence. The narcissist taught you what love is not. Now it's time to teach yourself what love is. It begins with you. Integration, not erasure healing, doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means integrating the pain into your story, without letting it define your identity. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole by facing your inner fragmentation. You don't just survive narcissistic abuse. You transmute it. You turn shame into self-respect, confusion into clarity, rage into boundaries. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What did this awaken in me that needed healing?" You were never powerless. Here's the most radical truth of all. You were never truly broken. Only disconnected. Disconnected from your power, your instincts, your voice. The narcissist didn't steal those things. They distracted you from them, and now, as the illusion collapses, you see what was always there. You, and that is the greatest escape of all. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that drained you, if you've ignored your intuition, doubted your worth, or lost yourself in someone else's ego, know this: you're not alone, and you're not broken. You're waking up. Carl Jung believed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, but it's also the most liberating. So here's your next step. Subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, philosophy, and the unseen forces shaping your life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and comment below. What red flag did you ignore, and how did you finally break free? The more we speak about these patterns, the less power they have over us. You survived the storm. Now it's time to rebuild in the sunlight,